Sleaze is finally making a comeback, and I have to say I'm rather excited. As someone who was a teenager during the late 10s and early teens in the UK, indie Sleaze was the cornerstone of my very existence. Indie Sleaze was the cornerstone of my existence. I may or may not have dressed up as Kesha for my 15th birthday party. One of the best ways that indie Sleaze is making a comeback is through our television screens. As the title of the video suggests, we're seeing this best represented through period dramas, which we'll be exploring today. Before I draw the links between these two seemingly unrelated topics, let me break down what the indie Sleaze actually is, if you were not there to witness the cultural moment. The indie Sleaze period took place mainly in the United Kingdom and the US between 2008 and 2014. It was a term coined in 2021 to describe the carefree, grungy maximalism of this aesthetic and lifestyle. It is hedonistic, kooky, and party chic. Think sticky dance floors, sweaty bodies, think bands like The Strokes, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, LCD Sound System, and of course the Arctic Monkeys, the Libertines, and later Vampire Weekend. One piece of art that encapsulates this period so perfectly is Skins, which I don't think needs an introduction. It's like a British, gritty euphoria, capturing youth culture of the time so well. It's a gritty story about a group of teenagers growing up in Bristol and all the messiness that comes with it, glamorising eating disorders, mental health conditions, drug taking and partying, as well as all of the chaos that comes with this lifestyle. If Brat Girl Summer is the cultural response to the clean girl aesthetic, indie Sleaze was a rebellion against the perfectionism and the pretentiousness of the hipster movement, with the latter being seen as a more curated and often pretentious, bringing with it a style of minimalist vintage. Indie Sleaze opted for an effortlessly cool, chaotic approach to fashion, reviving maximalist trends from the 1980s and 1990s. Indie Sleaze yearned for fun and creativity, following the hardship of the 2008 economic recession. It was a time before Instagram, before girl bossism, and where there was no chance of being filmed doing a line at a party. And that is perhaps why it is making a comeback. We're in an era of hyper-exposition to the perfectionistic tendencies of others. We have literal surveillance cameras in our hands at all times. It's no wonder we take inspiration from this period. It promises a break from perfection and an invitation to let loose. As the title of this episode suggests, this video is going to explore why period dramas are such a perfect medium to portray indie sleazeism through. The most obvious jumping off point is Saltburn. Being actually set in 2006, the links are explicit. Less obvious examples include Bridgerton, Marie Antoinette, and The Great, which I will come to. There is so much to be said about Saltburn, the 2023 tale of a young man who, like a moth to a flame, finds himself drawn to the life of his aristocratic classmate and his eccentric family. Like a rising tide, he slowly encroaches, polluting, diluting, and swallowing up the members of this fucked up family as he goes. Being set in 2007, it has indie sleaze written all over it. Its cinematography is raw and it's all about overexposure, with bare skin and neon parties. Costume designer Sophia Canal looked at Princes William and Harry and their rich mates, as well as Amy Winehouse, Lily Allen and Kate Moss for inspiration in stylistic choices for this movie. It features juicy couture tracksuits, Abercrombie & Fitch, and tacky accessories, in a typically indie sleaze state of disarray. In England, the richer and more old money people are, the more in disarray their clothes, Saltburn writer and director Emerald Fennell explains to GQ. Saltburn is about the weaponisation of class, status and detachment. There is a glorification of consumption and a lifestyle driven by desire, a core tenet of indie sleaze. Sexuality is also weaponised, used to control, to humiliate, especially through Oliver's relationship with the problem child of the family, Venetia. Sofia Coppola's 2006 Marie Antoinette is another prime example, telling the story of Antoinette's journey from 1770, leaving her home country in Austria at just the age of 14 to marry the future king of France, Louis XIV, all the way until the terrifying moment the revolution breaks out and her family are forced to flee their home. Being written in 2006, we can see the tones of this period baked into the piece. Every Nation explains. Coppola paints a vivid image of a teenager in the most important years of their development, rife with rebellion and experimentation. The opening shot suggests we might be getting a film about a Rococo-era rock star who lives a life of hedonistic extravagance. Post-punk indie sleaze blasts over an image of Antoinette having her feet massaged by a maid while she smirks at the camera. A kid stuck in a weird situation. In all the ostentatiousness and glamour of her situation, this is a tale of profound loneliness and tragedy, of even boredom, contrasting with sheer extravagance, which are all associated with the mystic aesthetic. Antoinette battles the submission her subjects want her to show, the pressure on such a young child herself to bear a child. She's facing an almost impossible situation, indulging in partying and gambling to survive within the French court, indulging in excesses which ultimately brings her demise in popular culture. This is a story about girlhood, with a candy-coated aesthetic inspired by the Rococo era in which it's set. Girlhood is a theme often associated with indie sleaze and is emphasised with music from the Strokes bringing a coming-of-age feel, bringing with it feelings of excitement and optimism and a devil-may-care attitude. Bridgerton. Our contemporary continuation of this movie comes in the form of Bridgerton, which itself inspired a revival of Regency era fashion. Bridgerton indie sleaze, otherwise known as Regency core, brings with it modern interpretations of classic Regency looks, like puff sleeves, snatch waists, and big skirts. This resurgence of dressing for comfort might be attributed to our preference for slouchy silhouettes indulged during the pandemic. Bridgerton is a period piece. It's a tale about excess, self-indulgence, and breaking the rules in terms of fashion and romance, and embracing anachronism. It is messy and romantic and hedonistic, bringing together lace, glitter, and sweat, with characters that are wild, raw, and impulsive. But it appeals to our desire to express ourselves and encourages fluidity on the roles of gender in fashion, with both men and women wearing corsets, riding boots, and waistcoats. It is certainly maximalised, indulging us in the fantasies of pleasure, and its colour palette of pinks, purples, blues, and blacks can be taken straight from a Tumblr account. This success offers a fantasy, an escape, at a time when most of the world was locked up. The final example features one of the icons of indie sleaze, Nicholas Hoult, who is one of the original cast members of Skins and plays the brother of Effie Stoneham, who is the indie sleaze icon. The Great tells the story of a young Catherine the Great, played by Ellie Fanning, who finds herself in a similar situation to that of Marie Antoinette, making her way as a young woman across Europe to marry a man she's never met, the rather unhinged Peter III of Russia. Where Bridgerton indulges in drama, whimsy, and romance, The Great glorifies absurdity and cynicism. Peter and the other characters are deeply flawed, but in a way that is strangely likeable, perhaps for their extravagance and punk-like attitude, which is the feature of indie sleaze. Think Pete Doherty and Russell Brand. It brings together contrasting cultural references. Its composer Nathan Barr, who scored the show, brought together classical scores with popish or electronic music, bringing together gloss and grime, as well as opulent costumes. Again, maximalism features, bringing in excess to a point of absurdity, reflecting Sleaze's penchant for messy rawness. It also taps into the trend of underwear as outerwear, which was a massive component within indie sleaze, with gowns and corsets becoming statements of power, and a subversion towards the royal family and gender norms. The Great is a story about a young woman navigating the world built for men, and taking steps to dismantle it. Catherine, like indie sleaze, is subversive. The power dynamics in The Great are pointed. Peter is a volatile character, a charming man, but a raging narcissist. Catherine navigates this using her wit and intellect to manipulate in a way that is entertaining and irreverent. She is an indie cool girl, desirable, idealistic, but is also facing a very dangerous situation. Her campaign to gain soft power in this dynamic and her continual sexualization within the court reflects this subtle exploitation of many women during the indie sleaze period, who were overly sexualized and often accessorized or fetishized in a male-dominated environment. This left many women exposed to exploitation, the lines between exploitation and empowerment blurred under the guise of coolness. And that's all I have to say on that. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if this has resurrected some nostalgia for you, I would recommend that you rewatch any of the above, as Saltburn, Bridgerton, The Great, and Marie Antoinette. And whilst we're here, Skins provides such a perfect escape from the world that we live in. Let me know your thoughts and comments. I'd love to hear from you, and subscribe for more. I bring out new episodes every Tuesday.